All right, welcome everybody to the 84th, believe it or not, installment of the Talented Learning Thought Leadership monthly webinar series. I'm John Lay, I'm the CEO of Talented Learning, and our discussion and topic today is how to succeed with asynchronous or self-paced learning, specifically in customer and partner training, although that the advice and the education that we're going to give to you today is really applicable across all of the online learning market, from K through 20, as well as employees and association members, and customer and partner learning in the extended enterprise. So it's a good broad base of knowledge that we'll bring today. But first, I'd like to welcome my co-presenters, or better phrasing is guest experts today. First off, we have Graham Glass, who's the CEO of Cipher Learning. Graham, welcome.
Welcome. Yeah, thanks a lot, John. It's great to be here.
Awesome. Nice to have you. Great to have you. As the audience, you'll see why in a second. And then Dr. Val Hastings is also joining us today.
Thank you. Good to be here, John.
All right. I'll introduce them. Great to have you. I'll introduce them further in just a minute, but we'll get right going to the agenda and what we're going to cover today and why it's important. Change it on my wrong computer. So over the last 18 months, just about all of us on this webinar, to one degree or another, has had to take a hard look at our content offerings and our business processes and make some hard decisions and hard prioritizations about what we're going to do to kind of pivot away from different degrees of live and a reliance on live methods of training. I think everybody on this call is at a different place in that pivot towards digital acceleration, and they're going to a different place. There's no ideal end state of where to be. It could be all asynchronous to a blend of, or a hybrid blend of live and asynchronous. And so it depends on the organization, and it depends on the culture of where that is. And we'll talk about some of that today. But personally, Talented Learning went through this same pain almost. Even though we talk about extended enterprise, almost all of our business was live and very high touch consulting across the marketplace. So we've spent the last 18 months struggling with our digital transformation or pivot, and trying to learn things about program design, instructional design, video production, and really the creation of asynchronous content of all types. But unlike maybe a lot of the audience, I have an unfair advantage that as a learning system analyst, I get to talk to experts all the time. And so really before I did anything, I collected advice from a variety of sources, including Graham, over the last year and a half. And that's what was the impetus of today's webinar, is to take that advice and share examples in a variety of ways, and do it in a unique way. So we're going to spend the first part on instruction. We're going to teach you about asynchronous and synchronous learning, the hybrid, the blend, to talk to you about. Graham is going to outline innovations in his product and in the industry that are to support that. Then we're going to shift gears, and we're going to go over to Val, who's the CEO of Coaching for Today's Leaders, among other things. And we're going to have a live discussion, case study interview, like many of you know we'd like to do here. And then we're going to double back, and we're going to see a live demonstration from Graham of Matrix, of a particular application of Cipher Learning, eating their own dog food. We'll come back to that in just a little bit. But without a doubt, we'll keep this moving today. Throughout the whole thing, feel free to ask questions, chat your answers, and we'll answer them in line as we go. If not, we will follow up and make sure that we get all your questions answered. And so what's neat about today's panel is I'm going to slide back and be more of a facilitator, because I'm more like the audience in this case. I'm here to learn from two experts from two really different perspectives. So a lot of you have said in the past that, yeah, these examples that we bring and the guests that we have are great, but we're no Western Union, we're no American Bankers Association. Our challenges are bigger, and we're a lot smaller than that. And that was one of the reasons that we wanted to bring Dr. Val Hastings on today, is because he's like the rest of us here on bootstrapping an organization, a content business organization, growing it for over a decade, doing the digital transformation, and being on the front lines of worrying about content every single day. And it's going to provide that perspective that all of us are in. It's going to sound just like the rest of us, and we'll see what advances he took to transform his organization. But Val is the founder and the president of Coaching for Today's Leaders and Coaching for Clergy. He's authored numerous books. He's developed 4 accredited coach training programs that are available in 5 continents and 5 languages. He holds a designation of Master Certified Coach through the International Coach Federation, its highest designation. He also holds the designation for Professional Mentor Coach and is an assessor of all 3 coaching credentials for the International Coach Federation. In addition to that, in teaching his own programs, he's also a faculty member at Coach University. Once again, Dr. Val Hastings, thanks for joining us.
Thanks. Thank you.
And what's really cool, audience, is that everybody here is a potential customer too. So you get to go after this and go check out the website and the coaching program, because there's probably not anybody here that probably couldn't improve that skill set. And so it's a 2 for 1. Our second guest, many of you may have already know, is Graham Glass from Cipher Learning. You may know him because he was on our Talented Learning podcast last week talking about similar things in content, but also the differences between corporate and K through 20 education technology. But that's probably not the reason you heard it last week. I think it was last week or 2 weeks, right, Graham?
Yep.
They announced just huge news of, since they're doing everything right, also bootstrapping the organization, they found a $40 million round of investment to do everything that they're doing now, but bigger and faster. So we'll continue to see more of Graham and Cipher Learning, which is a learning platform that has over 20,000 organizations using it around the world, makes asynchronous training and synchronous training easy. Before founding that, he was the chief architect of Mind Electric, the CTO of Web Methods, a professional or a faculty instructor at the University of Texas, an advanced software instructor, made a living of doing that. He gives speeches around the world. He's wrote multiple books. He has 15 patents in distributed computing. Between Graham and Val, we have some super experts here to talk about learning. Graham, once again, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure, John.
All right. So that's the intro. We'll skip down to learning. You guys know who we are. But let's just real quick, from a high level standpoint, as we dig down a little bit, just from a customer learning standpoint, the customer learning or customer education is really wrapped up into the broader customer experience industry. And that's something that's pretty mature and been around for a long time. But as it turns out, as education is a piece of that, there is it's not just about providing training for your customers anymore and just say, hey, here's your training. Organizations, when asked in this survey, they start dividing it into buckets. 84% they were focusing efforts on the adoption of trying to the onboarding of essentially of new customers. Another 47% responded that they're all talking about expansion. So how to use training strategically to grow better customers, making them more educated so they spend more. And of course, the cost of getting a new customer far outweighs just keeping your existing customers thrilled. And so 76% focus their time on retention or have retention. And without a doubt, because of the pandemic, people aren't going into stores as much. Everybody's shopping online. People are buying online. The expectation of taking training online at your own pace for the products and service that you're interested in is becoming standard. And certainly as we're coming out the other side in some parts of our country and in some parts of the world, we're probably still going to be with us for a while of organizations and individuals with a little hesitancy about going inside and taking their training or doing their shopping online. And so CGS, an independent organization, did a survey as a result of COVID-19. What is the estimated time your team has to spend redesigning or rethinking about their learning programs? And 34% have spent efforts onto that. And that's what we'll talk about today. One has to wonder who that 3% is that COVID came like, yeah, we're fine, no problem. But somebody was out there. And the last chart before we get into the meat of today is this chart's kind of hairy, and you'll see it afterwards. But what it shows is that looking at different content media, also from CGS, looking at different types of content media that exist. What happened in the pandemic, and really all the asynchronous ones grew, and all the synchronous ones decreased essentially over time. And so the trends is not with your organization or with Val's organization or even with Talented Learning. This is really broad and across. And so that's what we're here today. Since everybody's in this pivot, let's learn more about it. So at this point, what I'll do is I'm going to transfer over to Graham and make you presenter, Graham. And Graham has been talking about this very topic all over the world for years. And that's why we're going to let him do it all here and tell us what we need to know. Thanks.
Super. Okay, so let me see if I can get this working. Main screen, show my screen, do this, see if I can get it to all work. So can you guys see that one okay?
Perfect. You've been using GoToWebinar your whole life, looks like.
So before I get going through the PowerPoint, I just want to introduce myself and tell you where I'm coming from. So yeah, I am CEO and founder of Cypher Learning, but in the past, I actually did a huge amount of training. I mean, I've trained at least 1,000 people, probably more like 2,000 to 3,000. So I used to teach computer science at UT Dallas. And then once I finished my kind of stint in higher education, I founded a corporate training company and then ran a group of staff teaching all over America. But in those days, that was all pretty old school. So you would be in the room with your students, which was not bad. It was actually really good fun, but it certainly wasn't scalable. And then when I was teaching in corporate America, it was flying all over the place, which was once again fun, but started to get quite exhausting. And so it was pretty clear, even back in those days, that this was not the most efficient way to teach and learn. And as John mentioned, what's going on in the world right now is that a lot of people, you know, I was going to say thanks to COVID, no thanks to COVID, but a lot of people are realizing that, yeah, you actually can't even rely on the fact that you can be in the same room anymore. So it's not really an optional thing, it's now become a mandatory thing. And one of the things about Cypher Learning is because we have the Neo platform for K through 20 and the Matrix platform for businesses, we actually get to see what's going on in almost every education market sector around the world. So whether it was kindergarten teachers or university lecturers or people providing customer training or partner training, everyone kind of hit the same thing at the same time, which was how are we going to train people in this kind of new world? And I think it's quite a good to kind of think about this thing from a kind of a taxonomy perspective. So if you look at this particular diagram, on the left-hand side is old school, in-person, synchronous, which is what I did personally, and I'm sure a lot of you out there did for a long time. Then there is what they call synchronous learning, which was you're there at the same time, but you're not necessarily in the same room. And then there's pure asynchronous, which is one where the instructor isn't even there at all. So anyone can kind of take training whenever they want. And then there is a kind of a hybrid one, which I'll go into a bit more detail in just a minute. So let's run through this taxonomy, because I think it gives a pretty good idea of how you can mentally categorize all these modes of training. So the in-person synchronous, which is, once again, it's actually quite good fun. I'm definitely not putting it down. It's face-to-face training. And that's the training that I used to give all the time. And it's actually really good fun in terms of getting to know people, you know, having lunch together, joking, you know, you build really nice relationships with the people. But it is pretty tiring, especially if you do a lot of traveling. So because of this, people are doing less and less of this these days. This is still predominantly, by the way, they do training in high schools and in universities, but in businesses, fewer and fewer businesses are doing in-person training. Then you get into kind of synchronous remote, which is what a lot of businesses and schools got into during COVID. So this is the one where you still teach basically the same way. The only difference is that you're not in the same room together. So, you know, everyone who's got kids knows what it's like. The kid sits down at Zoom, the teacher's there on the other end through Zoom, and they kind of chit chat and go through PowerPoints, etc. And that's definitely a very quick way to deal with things like COVID, because you don't really have to change the way you teach. You're just not in the same room at the same time. But once people start getting used to using the internet and using learning platforms, they start to realize that maybe there's an even better way to do this. Something which is a bit more convenient and certainly something which is more scalable. And by scalable, what I mean is, even just take Cipher Learning. You know, we're in 15 different countries right now. So if we want to onboard a new partner, or we want to onboard a new employee, to get everyone synchronously taking a course at the same time is almost impossible. There's just too many time zones involved. And for large companies which have thousands or tens of thousands of employees, you can't fit everyone onto a Zoom screen at the same time. So it's really not very practical either. So then you get into what they call pure asynchronous. Now, the nice thing with pure asynchronous is that it's very, very scalable, because when a learner is taking the course, the instructor is not there at all. So the instructor creates a course, they put their blood, sweat, and tears into creating the best course they can, and then they launch it, and then learners can log in and take it at their own pace. And if you've heard the term MOOC for the massively online courses, that's how MOOCs are constructed. But the important thing about pure asynchronous is there is no synchronous interaction between the learners and the instructors at all. Now there is the so-called hybrid model, which is actually, I think, the nicest way you can do it if you don't have to scale too much. And the hybrid async, and we have a lot of customers on Matrix who do this, you'll create a course, and let's just say that course has 10 modules. And maybe what happens is you take module 1, 2, and 3 at your own pace, doesn't matter where you are, doesn't make any difference what time of the day. But module 4 says, we're going to have a Zoom meeting. So any questions that you have, you make notes of, you think about all the tough things that were not gone over with the instructor. And then maybe on Wednesday afternoon, module 4 is you get in a Zoom, you ask all of your questions, and then once you're done, then you do modules 5, 6, 7 at your own pace. And one thing that I really like about this approach is that you still get to personally interact with the learners. So there's kind of a personal touch. If the learners get stuck on a particular topic, they still have a way to actually talk directly with the instructor. And I think it's a very effective way of training. And one of the things that we've seen with our customers, some customers will have 2 versions of the same course. They'll have the pure asynchronous version, which is cheaper, and then the hybrid one, which also gives you access to the instructor at an additional charge. So you can actually monetize this particular model if you want.
Wow.
So now let's just take a look at asynchronous itself, because asynchronous actually has a spectrum. So we're going to run through just a few just to give you an idea. But later on in this webinar, I'm going to give you a live demo of some of these things in action. So the simplest one for asynchronous is what we call linear autoplay. And if you've used LinkedIn Learning, you've already experienced this. So this is the one where you go to module 1, which is typically a video, you click play, you pick up your cup of coffee, and you just go through module by module by module all the way through the end. And it's actually a really nice way to learn, as long as it's not too complicated, because that way you can just get a cup of coffee, sit down for an hour, and immerse yourself in a new learning experience. But a quite common one, which is what we use personally, is what we call linear with hurdles. So the general idea with this one is you take module 1, maybe module 2, but before you go to module 3, there's some kind of quiz. And sometimes these quizzes have conditions, like you have to get over 80% in this quiz before you can get to the next module. So the nice thing about this is you make sure that your learners just don't blow through the entire course without really understanding anything. They can only really continue to go once they've shown that they're absorbing the material. So these first 2 are the more straightforward ones. Random access is a very simple one. This just means that there's no order enforced upon you. You can just dart around wherever you want. And this makes sense if the modules don't necessarily build upon each other. So you might have a bunch of modules that touch upon different facets of the same material. And in this particular case, there's no particular reason to enforce a particular order. Static branching is a way to kind of decompose a module into multiple sections. And I'll give you an example. Let's just say that we wanted to have a course called How to Use Matrix LMS. And it might have one branch, which is how to use it as a student, another branch, how to use it as an instructor, and another branch, how to use it as an admin. And each one of those branches might have 3 modules in it. So in that particular case, you can take a course, split it up into branches, and you go through the branches, but the branches themselves have a specific order. And the very last one, which is the most sophisticated, but it is gradually becoming more popular, is what they call dynamic branching. And the general idea about this is that you take into account the learner's previous experience and their level of expertise, and that actually dynamically changes their experience through your course. And I'll give you a very simple example. Let's just say that very early on, you get the students to take a quiz, and you can set up a rule that says if they do really, really well in the quiz, then hide the basic options, but reveal some really advanced options. So the really, really advanced learners will get an advanced version of the course. Whereas if someone does pretty badly, then based on how well they do, you might show some remedial courses and hide the advanced courses. So more and more courses now start becoming dynamic so that what you see is based on your previous history. Now, just a few more minutes and then we'll wrap up. It's really easy to get bogged down in technology, but I do want to mention a few things that are very important when you are scripting a course for the future. You definitely want to keep the learners motivated. You don't want them to just go click, click, click through a bunch of PowerPoints. And you ideally want to build a sense of community. So human beings are very social animals. We actually prefer to learn with other people and have fun rather than just doing everything in isolation, which means that ideally you'd like your learners to be able to interact with each other, which is one of the cool things about using web technologies. So when you're using a platform like Matrix, the kind of things that we give you, the customer, so you can create these really compelling courses for your partners and customers, are features like automation, adaptive learning, and mastery rules. So I'll finish off this part of the presentation just by giving you just a taste of these things, and then I'll show you them in action in the live demo. Automation basically just allows you to script your course so that when certain things happen, certain actions will occur. So some simple ones. When they sign in the course, isn't it nice if 5 minutes later they get an automatic customized video welcoming you to the course? That makes you feel like, hey, this course is a little bit unusual compared with what I normally see. Or a simple one, when you finish the course, you get a certificate of completion. Or maybe raise the bar and gamify the course so that when they accomplish certain tasks, they get points and badges as part of a fun game. Or as I mentioned, adaptive learning. This allows you to control what kinds of content you see based on your previous history. So you can design these personalized pathways through the educational materials. And the last thing, if you're into competency-based learning, which is a bit more of an advanced topic, and probably a good place for another webinar, John, in the future, you can actually create a hierarchy of competencies that are taught by your courses. And as you go through the course, you can kind of check off the competencies, and based on the strengths and weaknesses, reveal certain modules to reinforce certain competencies. So hopefully that's given you a kind of an idea of asynchronous learning is definitely becoming more and more popular, especially reinforced by people's experiences with COVID. There's a taxonomy of asynchronous learning. So there's the super simple all the way through to adaptive learning. And I just want to leave you with a thought, which is, where is all this stuff going? We're a big believers that artificial intelligence is going to basically be able to raise the bar for learning platforms. They're going to become more intelligent, and they are going to be guiding you through your adventure, giving you recommendations and assistance as you go. So that's the end of my presentation. Let me see if I can figure out a way to, here we go.
Hey, couple.
Easy. So I think that's come back.
All right, let me change presenter back, but we got a couple questions for you here, so let's go ahead and knock those out of the way. When you were talking about the different paths, whether you're a learner or something else, is there the concept of shared content? So some of them are taken the same and then they go off and they come back in, or what's the best way to think about that?
What you can do, you can create these things called learning paths. And a learning path, you can say do A, then B, then C. And you could have another learning path that does D and then B and then F, for example. So they can merge into each other and then diverge. And if you've taken a piece in your learning path, then it's automatically completed regardless of whether it happens to be part of a learning path in the future. So Matrix has this feature called learning paths where you can create little courses that then include other courses. So you can kind of build a hierarchy as you go.
Interesting. This is probably a tough question, but when you mention that you have the pure asynchronous with no instruction, and then perhaps you have a second course that allows the instructor messaging or instructor communication for a premium. Any idea what that premium is worth? Is it like twice the value, of course? That's a hard question.
It's usually going to be significantly more, because if you want to scale a business, ideally you'd like to have thousands of people taking your course, and it's really hard to give the kind of the personalized thing if you have thousands of people. So my guess is it would probably be 2 to 3 times the cost. If I was doing it, I would definitely make it. It's not like 10%. It's going to be like 200% worth of the course. Because a lot of people, if they're budget sensitive, they're just going to go with, you know, the bare bones one. But there's a lot of people who are not budget sensitive, and they're totally prepared to pay the extra for the personal touch.
Interesting. What do you think this is my question. What do you think the popularity is from your perspective of using skill and competency models in the corporate side of the equation and not just on the education? Is that something that's gaining in popularity, you think?
Yeah, I mean, off the top of my head, I'd say probably 30% of our customers are using competencies. And I think a lot of it is not because it's complicated, it's just because they're not really familiar with this concept. You know, in the case of Matrix, it's a feature which is always there. You don't pay extra for it, but you do have to be aware of it and know how to use it. So that's where, you know, we still have work to do to show people the benefits of competency-based learning. I am hugely into it. All the courses that I ever did, even back at university, I always started with competencies before I even created any content.
Wow, perfect. What a best practice. Best practice that is not followed religiously.
But we're working on it.
Okay, we'll see if we can change that. Here's some education. All right, Dr. Val Hastings. Now we're going to get into some applications. So, making this how you take this platform and all the potential. You know, I'm sure like the rest of us, you looked at all these options, and you know, but you had to pick them, and you had to choose your strategy and go from there. And so, but before we get into your strategy and the decisions that you made, it would be great if you could introduce yourself and your business and what it is you do. Let's start at the top so we can frame it, and we'll dig down from there. Thanks again for joining us.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, John. And before I introduce myself, Graham, nice to meet you. We've been using your LMS for probably a decade or more. I mean, and we've searched and searched and searched. So thank you. So
yeah, and I want to say, it's really fantastic to meet you too, Val, because it's not that common for me to actually meet a customer, especially in this kind of scenario. So number one, I really appreciate your business and your loyalty, and I'm really looking forward to listening to your presentation too.
Thank you. Well, as John mentioned, my name is Val Hastings. I am a master certified coach. I've been coaching since 1999. Prior to that, I was a pastor. Please don't hold that against me, but that's what I did for 20 years. And then I rolled into coaching. 2004, I became a full-time coach and coach trainer. The way I ended up being a coach trainer was that all the people I was coaching said to me, "Hey, I really like what you're doing. Can you teach me?" And the math was very simple. I actually made more teaching in 1 week than I did three weeks of coaching. So I began to shift my business to coach training. We began in 2004 with newsprint, whiteboards, markers, masking tape, the whole 9 yards that we used back then before PowerPoints or anything. And I'd love to be able to tell you that I'm the genius that got us here, but actually I'm not. It was our participants who kept asking, well, could you do this? Could you add this? I can't be there this week. Can I make it up? How can I get the information? So we have a total of 146 hours of competency-based, by the way, Graham, competency-based training. So my ears were peaking when you're talking about the competency part of asynchronous. But it's 146 hours, and we used to do it a week at a time. Then you'd come back a couple months later, do another week, come back a couple months later, do another week. One, it was hard to find weeks that fit into everyone's schedule. It's hard to take a week off and go away. And people started saying, this is before GoToMeeting, Zoom, and all this stuff. People said, what if we used bridge lines? What if we used conference calls? And so we started to switch, now not 100% to using telephone technology, but we began to switch, and gradually people said, hey, I like this, a little bit in person, most of it on the telephone. We could record it as well so that people could access it later on. The problem became that people wanted to access the information at times when I wasn't in the office. So we had recordings, we had all this stuff, and we started looking around for an LMS. That made sense to us. Plus, they could access all the resources. We could put attendance there. Students, after they graduate, we'd archive them, but we could still stay in touch with them, which is a great feature. We keep all of our clients a warm touch with them. But we searched and searched and searched. We found Graham's LMS. It was in our price bracket. It was user-friendly. While there's all kinds of directions, we were able to figure out most of it without even reading the directions, which is really, really helpful. So we began to incorporate an LMS. Then we started using Zoom. We videotaped. Again, client-driven. They started to say, hey, I can't make the synchronous class Mondays from 1 to 4. In fact, Mondays don't work for me. I want the information. Lo and behold, we discovered our LMS has a way to do asynchronous material. So we started uploading that there. Those were really just, we record with GoToMeetings or Zoom. We've actually found that we get better quality with an iPhone to record and upload. Although at the end of the summer, we have a professional videographer that said, hey, I really appreciated your training. We need to take it up to the next level. So we're looking forward to really scaling that up quite a bit. But we out of our 146 hours right now, we do 24 hours asynchronous. We would do more, but right now the governing body or the credentialing body, the International Coach Federation, only allows 20%. They're looking to change that to 50% for a credentialed program because they've discovered that actually there is little to any difference between asynchronous and synchronous learning in terms of competency when it's done right.
Wow, that's interesting.
So
wow, what a great story. It's always best to be an entrepreneur when you figure it out by accident, I think, or not by accident, but just by market demand. You're like, hey, I could do this. What a great story. What a great story. So tell us about, so who needs coaching like this? Do you sell it to individuals? Do you sell it to businesses with individuals? Tell us what your typical customer looks like.
Sure. So actually, our typical customer would be an individual, or more recently, since COVID, it is organizations, businesses that want us to come in, well, actually not physically come in anymore, but they want us to provide coach training for 30, 40, 50 of their employees or more. The nice thing about having a synchronous material now, John, is that we can actually give them a preview. We can say, before you pay the top dollar for our gold standard, here's something you can try. So it's a way to kind of give them a taste in advance.
Wow, that's great. Okay, let's keep digging into that. So you started making this pivot to asynchronous because of customer demand and pushing you in that direction, but you're limited by the 25% or the 20% rules of your certification body. What about COVID? How did that impact, accelerate, change any of your plans? Did that change what the path you were on at all?
Sure. Like Graham was saying, I used to do a lot of traveling because people wanted in person before COVID. Not as much, but I did some traveling. COVID, that all stopped. We actually had our best year ever in terms of coach training because people adapted really well. They wanted to get training. They were worried about their future, so they wanted the best skills they could get. COVID did accelerate it. People now know how to use all this technology. So yeah, it accelerated everything. I was glad that we had the material in place already. So we could just take it, we're just tweaking it now. And John, by the way, even though the accrediting body says we can only do 20%, we've actually got interest in the entire 146 hours asynchronous, because some people are saying, I just want the skills and competency. I don't need the credential. So that's on our radar for the future to put together 146 hours asynchronous.
Wow. That's a mountain of work. That's a mountain of work.
Yes.
Which leads me, the one of the questions I had, just with talented learning is, where to start. I have months of curriculum that, I was delivering that. How did you look at 146 hours and say, okay, I'm going to pick these 24? Like, what was the process how you prioritize?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I began to ask myself, I like to repurpose things. So while I wanted to use it for students who were newly enrolled, I wanted to use it for marketing, for lots of other different purposes. So I looked at the curriculum we had. What was the entry level material? What were some of the pieces that I wanted everyone to know regardless of the path they took? And so that kind of governed what I put in there. We not only share content, we also have coaching demonstrations. So I wanted people to actually see, what they would be getting, kind of, again, giving them a taste of that.
Interesting. When somebody earns one of the certifications, so say that it's not the 140 hours you do just for the skill and competency, but you earn that.
Yeah.
What do they do with that then? Do they put that on their resume? Is that something that they use to?
Yeah, it meets the International Coaching Federation requirements as accredited training. They take a quiz when they're done the 24 hours. We automatically generate a certificate for them. So it can happen at 2 a.m. while I'm sound asleep, which is great. So yeah, we've generated those things. Also, when they complete the whole 146 hours, again, we've automated that whole thing with our LMS. Certificates generated. Easy to keep records.
That's great.
Yeah.
What about from a cost standpoint on your go-to-market strategy? As Graham was talking about the difference and the follow-up question about, with the instructor or without, did you struggle about how to come up with a price point for the asynchronous, and just in general, how did you think about that?
So in the market that I'm in, coaching is still kind of elusive to a lot of people. They don't quite understand it or know what it is. And so what's really important is to give people a taste of it. And so I wanted to put together 24 hours of solid taste at a price that you wouldn't even think twice about it. It's $350 for 24 hours of accredited training. That's a drop in the bucket compared to a $7,000 price tag for the whole program. Wow. So I wanted something that was, you weren't going to complain about the price. You were going to get something that you could use wherever you went. It has passive income. And it's passive income. We've had hundreds of people do the asynchronous, and it just generates, and it's a warm client now that's much more likely to transition into the fuller program.
So using it as an entry door with your entry level material, and it's essentially a marketing tool.
It really is,
an education tool at the same time. Wow, genius. And so, wow, listeners, $350. Get started here. That's great. So we already talked about. Graham talked about lots of different types or approaches of asynchronous content. What was yours? Like, what types of materials did you? What's it look like from a media or a learner experience standpoint?
So the 24 hours, that's pretty much the pure asynchronous Graham talked about. It has content-driven videos. It has resources for people to read, panel discussions that we've recorded, very little access to an instructor, although you could access somebody if you wanted. And then the remaining part, we do have smaller segments of asynchronous. It's more the hybrid that Graham was talking about, where there was, although ours was kind of a flip, there'd be more live class and then there'd be some video, if you wanted some advanced knowledge in that area.
Okay, great. That sounds like a great first step. Did you do the content development in that video shooting? Was it your team that figured out how to do that for the most part, or did you have to bring
So,
in complementary experts?
so John, we're a family business. So my wife is the COO. My daughter is the videographer with a
Wow.
really fancy iPhone, and that's all we did. An iPhone, a microphone that we plugged in, and it's amazing the quality you can get. And we want to take it up higher than that, but
Yeah.
good quality. Get a stand for your iPhone. It's amazing
There
what you
you,
can do.
there you have it. It's not
Yeah,
expensive to make
yeah.
the transition.
No,
Coming from a similar family-oriented bootstrapping business, I get how it's employed. I'm now even reaching down into my high school kids and trying to get some labor out of them too on this. Since I can't get them mowing the grass, I'm getting them editing things.
yeah.
Good. So, what's your next step? If you look 5 years in the future, where do you think you're going to be?
So we're going to have that total asynchronous 146 hours. We'll have that before 5 years. That'll be in place. I think you mentioned to the audience we train on 5 continents. Currently, we're in 5 languages. We're adding French shortly. I want to have it asynchronous in those languages.
Wow.
Although, and John, I think I mentioned this to you, in Brazil, where they speak Portuguese, they really have requested that we not do it in Portuguese, but in English with the subtitles, because they want to learn English while they're learning coaching. So,
Bundling your hobbies, I guess.
hey, we can do that.
That's great. How interesting. All right, last question for all of us that aren't as far along the path as you, which is probably many of us. If you could go back 5 years from now, or to meet yourself 5 years ago, what advice would you give yourself? What do you wish you knew when you started this process that you had to learn the hard way?
Well, I would listen more to my clients, first of all, because they have the answers of what I need to do next. And I think I would just do everything sooner, earlier, and more aggressively.
Now that's good advice.
Yeah,
That's good advice. And you know what? It's not uncommon from what I hear. They're just like, just launch it. You can always improve it. Just
that's
launch
right.
it.
Just do it. Yep.
Just do it. All right. Well, Dr. Val Hastings, that was a great conversation. It's exciting to hear about your progress and your history and how you're evolving and the grand plans that you have. And I think a lot of us see ourselves in some or all of that story. So hopefully everybody got some good nuggets like I did. I'm scribbling notes.
Thank you.
Some furious. All right. And so I am going to, with that, well, hold on. I guess Graham did show those screenshots, so I'll leave them in the deck for afterwards. But let me make Graham the presenter again. Now let's see this matrix. We've been hearing about it. We've been tantalizing it with what it looks like. Let's take a look.
So can you guys see this?
Yeah, we can.
Yep.
Okay. So this is actually the best part of my job, is demoing our own product. As you guys mentioned, there's a lot of applications for asynchronous learning. One of them is onboarding, whether it's onboarding new customers or new partners or new employees. And we're in 15 countries around the world. By the end of this year, we'll probably be in 20 countries. We're hiring 10 to 20 people a month right now. So as you grow, figuring out how to scale your onboarding, once again, whether it's partners or employees or customers, is quite a big challenge. So what we did is that we created our own matrix site, and we branded it Cypher Learning Skills. And so, some people use the phrase eat your own dog food. We're definitely using our own product to onboard our own employees. So what I thought I would do is I'll just show you a little bit about how we use our own product, because it is going to allow me to show you some of the various techniques that I mentioned earlier on in terms of asynchronous learning. So in this particular case, I'm logging on as an administrator. This is our main dashboard. But whether you were a new employee or a new partner, you'll get this nice little welcome banner. And I want to show you, focused on a specific course, which is kind of our welcoming course that all of our new employees take. Now, we do maintain a catalog of lots of different courses. So we've got ones for our marketing team on brand guidelines. We've got introductions to various products. This is the onboarding course here. And I'm going to specifically focus on this one, Welcome to Cipher Learning. So I'm going into this particular course, and I'm going to focus just for this, fairly short demo on the meat of the course, which are the various modules. So when somebody onboards, there's basically 10 modules for them to take, and each one of these modules is broken up into sections. So I'm going to demo to you just a couple of modules. We're not going to go through the whole thing, but like this one here, Welcome to Cipher Learning. Who is this handsome man? And so when I go into this particular module, there are several sections, and from the instructor's perspective, they would create content that looks like this. So in this particular case, it's all actually done using our built-in editor, so it doesn't involve any particular technical experience. But you'll notice things like dynamic content. So hello user first name, so it's going to say hello Graham, or hello John, or hello Val. And as we go through the content, we've got some video. We can go to the next section. This is a little bit about our brand story. So if this was onboarding a new customer, it might introduce them to your company, tell them a little bit about the background of your company. Then in our particular case, we have the 3 products. So we're teaching people about the 3 products. But this isn't the main thing. The main thing I want to show you is how you go from fairly static content to making a lot more fun using things like gamification and automation. So I'm going to show you how easy it is to do this. So when I first create the course, throughout the course are sprinkled these things called automation actions. So here, for example, it says, add actions here that should be performed when a learner is enrolled. And you have a lot of things that you can script. So you could say, for example, I'm going to give you 10 points in a game. Or I'm going to send you a custom notification which says, hey, welcome to my course. It's great for you to be here. And or you can even do things like when somebody joins a course, also enroll them into a group where they can actually just socialize with other people who are part of your course. But the general idea here is that you can use automation to trigger actions when certain things occur. That was a very, very simple one. I'll show you another simple one. And Val mentioned it. When people complete the course, they really like to get a customized, branded certificate of completion. So I can just say, hey, when you complete the course, I want to award you this particular certificate. And I actually want it to pop up so it's part of the user experience. But if you're doing more sophisticated things like learning paths, where you have one course followed by another, when you complete the basic course, you could actually add something here which says, add you into the intermediate course. So you can actually script like a flow of one course to another. Or if you've enabled e-commerce where you sell the courses, you could say, when you complete this particular course, I'm going to automatically, or we haven't enabled it here, but you could give them an automatic 20% coupon for the intermediate course to kind of keep the momentum going. But what about some more interesting ones? So for example, we're really into gamification. And in Matrix, it's really, really simple to create one or more games in a course. And for fun, we created a little game called Reaching the Top. And the levels, people talk about level 1, level 2, level 3. We named this all based on climbing. So if you get really, really good, you get to the summit. And when you first get to the first level, you get to base camp. So what we wanted to do was sprinkle automation actions so you get points and badges and level up as you hit certain points in the course. But we also enabled something called team learning. And so what we did is we created teams for each one of the divisions in our company, so that the design team is kind of competing against the engineering team, which is competing against the sales team. That's just like another level of fun. And to make use of automation at this point is very easy. So if I go to a module, so let's just say I want to say when you get to the end of module 1, which was Welcome to Cipher Learning, I want to give you 50 points. So it's really easy to sprinkle points and badges and gamification and e-commerce coupons throughout the entire course. Now, what I'm going to do just to finish this off is to give you an idea of the learner experience. So it's very easy to set this up as an instructor, but now let me go ahead and take the course. So this is now the learner experience. So I've gone to the course. Notice that I'm using an asynchronous feature which requires you to take the course in order. So we want the students to go through 1 and then 2 and then 3. And you'll notice in my game here, I've got 0 points. So I'm in the valley of silence. I'm nowhere in the game. You'll also notice this little green thing will show you if other people are taking the same course. It actually flashes and shows you what other people are doing. So you get an automatic sense of community when you're taking the course. So let me just start it. So here it is, welcome to Cipher Learning. There's a little video here. I'm going to play the video. It only takes a minute, but it's really good fun. This is one that we just did at Christmas time.
My name is Graham Glass, and I'm the CEO
You're going to like this.
Cipher Learning. Our company provides great learning platforms for schools, businesses, and entrepreneurs. One of the best things about our company is that we're distributed around the world. Our team members have a variety of cultural backgrounds, speak many languages, and this allows us to work directly with our customers wherever they're located. Now let's have some fun, and I'd like to introduce you.
So this is actually pretty good fun.
Sziasztok! Zsolt vagyok, és üdvözöllek Erdélyből.
Mabuhay! Ako si RD mula sa Philippines.
Hola, un fuerte abrazo desde España.
مرحبا أنا إياد جبري the CTO of Cipher Learning.
Hello, I'm Alexia from the US.
नमस्ते, मेरा नाम शशांक है और मैं इंडिया से हूँ.
Aangenaam kennis. Goedemiddag van Zuid-Afrika.
Olá, meu nome é Ulisses, eu sou diretor comercial da Cipher Learning no Brasil.
Mabuhay! Ako si Jen Padernal mula sa Pilipinas.
Hola, soy Chari. Saludos desde México.
And I'll kind of skip to the end here. But the reason I mention this one is that this shows you the power of asynchronous learning, because this is some of our team members around the world. Just imagine if you were trying to do some synchronous learning with people in that many time zones. It's just not feasible.
Mm-hmm.
And so as you go through the course, people are taking this at their own pace, learn a little bit about the brand, and you'll see something happen in just a minute, which is good fun. So I complete this part, and I go towards the end. Now, here's an example where I'm introducing people. So even though it's pure asynchronous, I'm doing it at my own pace. For me to get to the next part, I actually have to post something for that everybody else can see. So it says, why should I come to your country? Because California is great. Whoops. Anyway, excuse the typos.
You should never try to type on a webinar.
I know. I got to learn that. So at that point, I've actually kind of introduced myself, and other people will get an alert about this, but I'm still asynchronous. I didn't actually have to be online at the same time, which is a really important thing. Got a little org chart, and at the very, very end, we have this thing that I mentioned, which is the linear with hurdles. So I have to take a quiz at this point to get to the very end of module 1. So I probably won't even get them all right here, but I'll do it very quickly. So no, yes, no, yes, okay. So that's the end of my little quiz, and looks like I passed the quiz. I got 5 out of 5, and then here we go. So here's automation in action. I set up the system saying when you complete the first module, you're going to get some points. So, hey, I've reached base camp. I just got 25 points because I reached base camp. And I got another 50 points because I completed the module. So hopefully that kind of gives you an idea that you can take something which is really important, the ability for you to scale onboarding partners or onboarding employees. You can start creating a course that seems fairly traditional when you first go, but when you start using automation and gamification, you can really jazz up your course. So even though it's purely asynchronous, it's still really a lot of fun to take. So, and we've had 100% of our employees give great reviews to this. Everyone really enjoyed using it. And you can do the same thing with your customers and with your partners.
Wow, that just looks absolutely great. In addition to the interface and everything, like competitively, what you typically see is that you can get points at the end of something. Like you finish this course or you finish something, you get the course. What I haven't seen is just that nice flow of integration that you could do it anywhere you want, any way that you want to try to jazz things up. You know, that's really
Thanks.
special. I know you only had 15 minutes, but it was a nice thing to show.
Yeah, hopefully that gave you a little taste of, what's possible.
Wow, yeah, no, I love it. What do you think, Val? You get some new ideas?
I took some notes down here. I'm talking to my team tonight.
We got more to do. All right, no, I thought the same thing too. Every time I get with Graham, I think I'm standing still here in life. Okay, let's get this sharing. I'll take this back. Wow, good stuff. Very exciting. See, audience, now you know how fun my job is. Every day is like this, where I just get to. This is why we wanted to have this session, because you just can't learn like this. Well, maybe you can asynchronously, but you can't learn without you could learn asynchronously like this if we had experts like this available all the time, which we don't. But we learned some great stuff today. You know, the market's changing. The market was changing long before COVID for the reasons that Val was saying, and we were saying is that customers are driving. Customers don't have time to take a week off work and fly, or the cost to do any of that. Plus, to support it from an organizational standpoint on the other side of that is brutal. And so all those changes are already happening, and all organizations had to shift from one model to another at their own speed. But with COVID, we all got put in that forced labor camp of shifting immediately, and it could be anywhere along that spectrum that Graham talked about, from the purely live to the purely asynchronous or even hybrid. But every organization had to make that shift for some or all of their programs, and do that in a strategic way. How do you pick what parts you're going to do, and what you're going to do first and prioritize? Well, we learned today it starts with a skill and competency model. Is a great place to start developing your courses and make sure that you're doing it in a strategic way. But then at the same time, try to pick your content that gives you the most punches. So, you can, like Val said, be able to, use it to create content that's good for marketing, that's good for a freemium concept or a low cost concept to get qualified prospects in the door. And then, use some of that automation that Graham was showing to take them from that one level of customer into that premium level customer, or different ways to engage them. But nonetheless, through the hybrid, the autoplay, using the hurdles, using the automation, using the random access and the branching and the smart branching and the adaptive learning, there are always gamification, the social interaction are always to jazz up your asynchronous. So it's not just a video, or it's not just a page turner SCORM court. There's a lot of things that you can do to jazz it up. So I hope you learned that. And I think Val gave the best advice I've heard in quite a while, in a succinct way. Is paraphrasing it, but do more, do faster, do it more aggressively, because it's good for your organization, both fiscally, and as well as maturing as a content company and an extended enterprise content company. So there you have it. That was our thing today. We're taking it right to the end. There's a couple of questions we didn't get to, but we will follow that up. If you want to contact us, here are our LinkedIns. It's all the same, but LinkedIn, John Lay, Val Hastings, and Graham Glass. And so I'd love if you join our network, since we all obviously think about the same things. I left Val's email off there just so that you didn't know what he was signing up for, but you can contact him certainly by going to LinkedIn and learning about his course. But most importantly, I think for everybody, to go to coachingfortodaysleaders.com and check it out. Yeah, it looks great. See what you put together, and I encourage somebody to drop that 385 and get smarter at the same time you're getting smarter about content development. Certainly go to Cipher Learning. They got certainly information on this, but they also have a huge resource section where you can really learn a lot of the things that Graham was talking about, and learn that in a self-paced way, in an asynchronous way to up your skills. And certainly visit talentedlearningcenter.com. Our our new member-based community where we teach how to buy and how to sell and how to deploy learning systems to folks that want to. And as part of this, I forgot to mention at the minute, I know probably a lot of you signed up for the opportunity to win one of the 10 free memberships to the new Talented Learning Center. We're going to name those randomly tomorrow and then get from 10 attendees today. We'll contact you. We'll also put it on LinkedIn so that make sure. So as we roll out ours and do similar to Val of finding ways to get people in the door to give us feedback and help direct us. That's the spirit behind that. So congratulations to those that win, and thanks for everybody for attending. Dr. Val Hastings, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Enjoyed it.
Great.
Yeah.
Outstanding. Graham Glass, man, you're great. This is awesome. I can see why you just found $40 million. You're on the right track. Congratulations. Thanks for joining us today. And audience, have a great day, and we hope to see you on the 85th installment of the Talented Learning Monthly Thought Leadership Webinar Series. Boy, that's a big title, but it says it exactly. Have a great day, everyone. We'll see you on the next.
All right. Take care. Yep.